Machine.
Hi there, it's Claire here, and welcome to Hot Pod Time Machine. This is the podcast where we discuss a decision from our past which changed the trajectory of our future. And I'm very happy to welcome special guest Steve Downs. Hello,
Hi,
Steve.
Claire.
Yeah.
So good to see you again.
So good to see you in our respective booths. Well, I'm in space, but you're in your booth.
I couldn't help but notice.
Yes, I'm transmitting live from space.
Yeah.
Steve.
I believe that's the Andromeda Galaxy, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, have you been? Have you been?
Oh, not recently. No, not recently.
Steve, when I asked you to do this podcast and it's about decisions, without talking about the decision you're going to talk about on this podcast, what kind of decisions came to mind at first? Because, you know, we make micro and macro decisions every day that affect our lives. So
Right.
what kind of things came to mind first?
Well, I think what came to mind first was, things of my youth. I guess I automatically went there because, those are the period, that's the time when your future is unknown. And there are, as you said, there are, little decisions we make every day that determine the rest of our lives. And some are bigger than others. And, there are a few encounters that I could think of, and encounters with certain people, and then actual decisions that I made, or in some cases were made for me, that with the benefit of hindsight, you look back and you can see, wow, had I gone a different way, it would have been an entirely different future for me. And there are several that come to mind that are, I mean, I'm very happy with the future that I chose. So,
Okay.
but although I'm not sure I chose it, I think it chose me. But yeah, it's that's kind of where I went with that.
Interesting, because I was about to say, no one, now we're like 20, almost 30 episodes in by the time this goes out. No one has chosen a decision that wasn't made for them, like that was foisted on them, if you know what I mean, and then changed the trajectory. So tell us, what was that decision that changed your whole future?
Well, the decision, I mean, there are several significant ones, but the one I'm a big believer in first thought, best thought. So when you first posed the question, the first thought that I had was I was a drummer in a rock band when I was a kid, from the time I was in middle school up into college. And by the time we were in college, I was probably 18, 19 years old, maybe 20. And the band was going along, but we were no great shakes, but we were having fun. And we felt like we were approaching a crossroads. And the crossroads was, are we just going to be a college band that plays, fraternity parties and local bars and cover songs and all that? Or are we going to take it to the next level? And there was a little somebody on my shoulder that advised me against being a drummer in a rock band.
Oh.
Yeah. And it was really it didn't seem like, even at that young age, maybe the best career move one could make.
Okay.
And if you ever saw the movie Spinal Tap, it usually doesn't end well for the drummer.
No.
So, but really, I look back on that, and I loved music, and I still do. I loved music. I loved playing music. I loved being involved in the whole thing. But when I decided that maybe being a performer wasn't the route, then I wanted to do something that stayed close to the music, because I was in college and nothing was jumping out at me career-wise. I think I thought, maybe about some sort of journalism career for no particular reason, but I wasn't really focusing in on anything. I knew what my passion was, and my passion was music and rock and roll. So if I wasn't going to play it, then I would like to be around it. I'd like to produce it. And so my initial sort of track was, I want to be a record producer. That sounds like a great way to be next to the music and also maybe get a regular paycheck. And so So the only that in those days there was no real course you could take for it. I think that's different now, but there wasn't then. And the only course you could take to be a record producer was you walk into a recording studio and they hand you a broom and you start sweeping up, and that's record producing 101.
Yep.
Uh, and but I thought maybe radio would be a good way to launch into that career. So I approached the local college radio station and I started taking courses in that, and then another key moment happened that again, was a definite signpost that I was going in the direction I should be going. And my first teacher for my first radio class, part of that class was you had to do a little demo tape of you being a disc jockey on the air. So you
Okay.
had to write you had to intro the songs, and you had to have a newscast and make a commercial and all these things. So I did all that, and the teacher said to me in a very dry, sort of just aside, really, you might be good at this. So when you're 19 years old and somebody of authority says you might be good at something other than, getting high and
Yeah.
chasing girls, it impacted me because it was really the first time that I was told. I mean, your parents were encouraging, and mine were very encouraging, but when somebody outside that
Mm.
says you might have a talent for something, and it was something that I enjoyed doing, that launched me into the career that I ended up doing, which was radio for 44 years, and everything else sprung from that. So it's really, I suppose, two decisions, but those were the ones that set the course of my life.
I love that because that little bit of encouragement that a mentor, an older person can give a kid, and I often think, God, think of all the kids out there that don't get that, and
Exactly.
the hidden talents that they might have. I'm sure you meet all of these kids at cons where they say, I want to do this and I want to be this, and I just think, God, a lot of people might not reach their potential. So that was a
Yeah.
very kind thing for that older person to do for you,
It was. It was. And many, many, many years later, probably 20 years later, I did have the opportunity to thank him, uh, because at that point my career was going very well, and things were going great. And I, through a series of coincidences, was able to contact him and thank him and ever since then, just exactly what you said about that moment of contact that not everybody gets, but if you get it, that's why I think teachers are so important, and people who pursue that calling are just so important, and it's so important for us as students or recipients of their profession to acknowledge it and to be able to say back to them, you know what, you changed a life, and it changed it for the better, and it's good that they should know that.
Oh yeah, I mean this is the reason why I still every time I go back up to Glasgow to visit my parents, I visit my art teacher.
Yeah,
Because and she lives on her own, and she's much older now and in a wheelchair and everything. So I will always keep in touch, try and phone her. But I too was also a teacher, part time music college, teaching music PR. And some of the kids that I taught come out to Comic Cons. They come out and they'll tap me on the shoulder and go, Claire, do you remember me? Do you remember me? And some of them end up being volunteers, and I see them sitting at the tables. I'm like,
oh,
oh,
that's so
which
cool.
is
That's so
really, it's nice. It's
Yeah,
really cute.
it does validate the phrase "what goes around comes around," and
Yeah.
I think that's a real positive example of that kind of thing happening.
Well, this is the thing. Like, I do feel, that young people need, especially these days, need encouragement,
Yeah,
especially from older people. They're being given a world that's quite hard to deal with. And I
indeed.
think it's nonsense that they're all lazy and they're all soft and they're all actually they're
Yeah,
going to have to be the opposite, very
yeah,
hardworking and very hard. Would you agree with
absolutely.
that now?
100%. I think it's I often say I'm glad I'm not entering the business or even the grown-up world now, because it's a very different world than what I had. I suppose that each generation probably says that about the prior generation, but I think the challenges that younger folks face today with are just huge. And I think for the most part, from what I can see, they're handling it pretty well.
Yeah.
But they are immense. I mean, just the whole the whole AI thing, as an example, as a current example, is huge. And how they're going to navigate that, I have no idea. But I agree with you. I think that I have a lot of faith in the younger generation, and we get to interact with them at all the Comic Cons that we do and everything. And I'm very encouraged when I come away from it, because I see a lot of positive potential there, and I'm very encouraged by it.
I feel like when people do moan and there's that disconnect, like, oh, young people, it's just because they've not interacted with different generations.
Exactly. Yeah.
It would be like me saying, oh, old people, but that's terrible. Like,
Yes, it is.
Sorry. Hey, Steve, I wasn't referring to you. You put yourself in that hot water, Steve.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
But like, I count my art teacher as my friend, and she's in her late 70s now. And like, I don't think of age as anything. I think we need to learn from each other,
Yeah.
So I need
Absolutely.
to learn. And it has to go the other way. But let's talk about when you were a young person. So back when you were a drummer, I want to know more about this. So, because I resonated with a lot of what you were saying, because I love music is my number one. It is my absolute number one. Rock, metal, like that is the thing.
Yeah,
And I grew up with like my parents' bands, like Yes and all these bands when I was growing up, and I played guitar. And I loved it, and I wanted to be in a band, and I just, something inside me, I was like, nah, I don't know. Like, I don't think this is the career for me.
It is a risky business, that's for sure.
Kind of want to eat and pay rent,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, me too. I was a big fan of eating and having a roof over my head.
Same.
Call me crazy, but yeah.
Same. I was a really boring, I guess, and sensible teenager, but it really resonated with me, because I ended up becoming a music PR, because I wanted to be close. I miss playing music. I go back to it often on stream, or I'm trying to incorporate it into my comedy now. Do you still play drums?
I don't really play. Well, I have a set. I have a conga, and I have bongos, and and I bang around on them every once in a while. And I also played guitar. In fact, that was my first instrument, was guitar. I just realized I was a better drummer than I was a guitar player. But and I still have a guitar. And excuse me, sorry. You like my phone?
Goodness! For those watching on YouTube, listening on Spotify, his phone is flashing like a bloody UFO.
Yeah, and sounds like one too.
It's like some studio friggin' thingy 59 over there, whatever it's called. Like, Jesus Christ! Sorry, you were talking.
No, I need all the attention things I can get: flashing lights, vibrations, noise, whatever, to get my attention. I'm a little ADD, I'm afraid.
Did you prefer playing drums eventually then when you were
I did prefer play. I had a band, and we used to practice in my folks' basement, and consequently, the drummer would leave his drum set there. He wouldn't break it down and take it home every night after so he'd just leave it there. So I got to go downstairs after everybody left and start banging around on it, and I had an aptitude. I could tell right away that I had an aptitude for it, and I did enjoy. I was, like I said, I was a better drummer than I was a guitar player. Not that I was a great drummer, but I was better at that than I was playing guitar. But I still do both to a little degree. I don't have a trap set. I don't, I'm sure my neighbors are grateful that I don't have an actual drum kit. But I do have a conga, and I do have some bongos, and so I do, when I'm particularly bored, start playing around and having a little fun.
So, there's stereotypes in bands, personality types, like bassist, the singer, the front person, that kind of thing. What kind of person would you say, what kind of stereotype were you, or what kind of drummer were you, would you say? Were you quite wild? I always think the drummers are quite kind of, they've got a wild spirit, and they're always very sociable. I always think drummers are very sociable.
Yeah, I would go along with that. I think I was the sociable type. I'm trying to think of who my heroes were. My one drum hero was Ginger Baker from Cream. That was the guy that I now he was crazy as could be. I mean, he was literally out of his mind, but he was a fantastic drummer, and I wanted to play drums like him, and I would set up my kit like him, and I would, I didn't wear my hair like him because he was kind of all over the place, I think I was, I was you know what, I think drums and playing a musical instrument in general allow you to be to come outside of yourself. It's a way. I think I was probably a shy kid when I was growing up. I would fancy myself to be shy, and music and performing music was the way to come out of that. I was very shy around girls, and I was petrified by the female species, and the only way that I could really express myself what was to play, and to play in the band, and that helped me to come out of my shell and interact a little better.
It's a funny thing. I have often talked about this as well, and it's only other musicians that understand that. I was also quite shy. I'm still a bit of an introvert. I just obviously have to turn it on for work. Otherwise, I couldn't do my
Yeah,
bloody job.
yeah.
But I would also say I find emotions quite hard to express as a person
Mm,
anyway. I am a very expressive person, but if you're going to ask me how I really feel about things, I've got no words sometimes. That's when I
yeah,
kind of get stammer and I get a bit weird. But
yeah.
yeah, when I pick up guitar, it sounds like a really, for lack of a better word, wanky thing to say. But I pick up guitar and there's something about closing your eyes and singing a song and listening to the music and you feel like you're inside it.
Yeah.
And it's a
I think it
very,
takes you to another place. It takes you somewhere else. And hopefully it takes the listener somewhere else. But I think it definitely takes the performer if you're doing it right and you really putting everything you have into it, it takes you outside of yourself and somewhere else. And hopefully you can take those who are listening to you with you. And that's part of the magic of it.
and it's just wonderful. There's no other feeling. I've stood on stages and done all sorts, but that for some reason feels personal. I think that's when your true spirit comes out.
Yeah,
But
I think so.
is there
Absolutely.
anything that you've done though, Steve? Like since then, obviously you're a disc jockey, and you're the Masterchief as well, and that's what people know you for too.
Hmm.
But are there any other things you've done aside from music that made you feel like that? They've taken you out of yourself and made you look inside your soul or express yourself in a
Mm.
different way.
Wow, that's deep.
So it's very deep for a podcast on a Monday
Yes, it
night.
is. It is. Um, well, you kind of touched on it, with yourself, and I couldn't agree more. That doing this kind of work, any kind of performing, does, and oftentimes the performers, especially I think comedians, I think, and I know you do some stand up, and I think it's the hardest job in the business. I have such respect for people who get up there and do it. I don't think there's anything more challenging or difficult to do than stand up comedy, but any kind of performing can take you outside of yourself, and maybe you know, find out things about yourself that you might not have known otherwise. And I don't know. I think my radio career, uh, I was able to do that, and that was another. The first thing that attracted me to music was the Beatles. And the first thing that attracted me to, or my first observation as a 13-year-old watching the Beatles on Ed Sullivan was, wow, look at the girls scream for these guys. I want to do that.
I see a
You
theme
know?
here, Steve.
Yeah,
Seeing a theme
you get a
here.
theme.
He loved the ladies.
I love the ladies, but I was just too shy. But the radio career, I think, also was a way of uh, expression and consequently finding things out. Sometimes when you're trying to convey a thought, you surprise yourself and in how you think and what you're thinking about and what you're feeling. And I think the radio career and being on the air as a disc jockey, I think really helped me to gain some confidence, which is so important when you're going through those early years. And that was a big, even more so than being in a band, I think was really a big thing for me, that I started to feel confident that A, there was something I could do that I was good at, and B, it was a way of expressing my feelings to other people, and that really helped quite a bit.
Especially when you are dealing with. I can sort of maybe resonate with that a little bit from the PR side. You're dealing with big characters.
Oh yeah,
You're not in the band, so you're not just having a laugh, as in having a drink and getting wasted and playing music. You're the one that's like, no, I've got to like almost like take charge here.
oh absolutely, yeah. No, that happened all the time. I did a show for several years called Rockline, which in the States was a nationally syndicated radio show. It was a 90-minute weekly show, and we would interview, mainly rock stars, and then take calls from all over the country. And so I was the host. So now, like you say, you're dealing with, big personalities. You're dealing with, Slash and Axl Rose, or the guys from Kiss, or Van Halen, or, and you have to be the grown up in the room.
And that's a different time period as well, because that's
It
a
is.
whole different beast.
Whole different deal.
I feel like everyone nowadays, and perhaps this is me sounding a bit like an old person, but I feel like now we don't have those same sort of rock stars. We don't have that anymore. And I'm not saying it's better or worse. All I'm saying is it was a different era.
It was a different era. You're right.
They were.
Yeah. And I don't know what it was funny. I was just having this conversation with somebody today about it's a different world now, and will the people who are the stars of today, the Ed Sheerans or
Adele's or
exactly, will they be the giants and the icons 20, 30 years from now? I don't know.
Don't know. I mean,
and why don't we know? Because it's a different ball game now, and the road to that kind of success is different, and then once you get there, sustaining that kind of success is different. So I don't know. I think there's some great talent out there. I just don't know if it's lasting talent, and I suppose time will be the teller of that.
I'm a wee bit sad because I grew up with guitar music, hard guitar, not Ed Sheeran. No offense if anyone listening likes Ed Sheeran. It's not for me.
No, yeah. Ed's a fine guy.
I'm sure he's a lovely guy.
Yeah, and he makes some great music. Yeah.
But for me, I like the harder, loud stuff. And for me, I don't really see. There are new bands out there that come across my path, but it's a shame there was a slow decline of rock music. There was grunge and then Britpop.
Yeah.
And then there was that kind of new metal phase, which, it was what it was. And then it just started to become a bit kind of more compressed to me. I guess it was a bit saccharine and a little bit compressed and a little bit, I don't know, corporate sounding. I mean.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, I can think of other times when we've gone through these phases.
Yeah.
And, there was, in my lifetime alone, I can think of about 2 or 3 instances where the popular phrase was rock is dead. And well, it wasn't. Turns out it wasn't. And, the different styles, they ebb and flow, they come and go. And so I think that, although I agree with you, especially when it comes to, hard rock and metal, I think it's in sort of an ebb stage at the moment, but it will come back. It always does. Those, that music hits a nerve that, or scratches an itch that needs to be scratched. And it will come again, and it'll be in some different form. And we've gone through the corporate rock eras. I remember back in the in the 70s in particular,
Mm.
with the Foreigners and the Bostons and the, all this sort of corporate rock label that got hung on them. But it comes and goes, and the uh, maybe the exciting thing will be, well, what's next? Who will the next, Motley Crue be, or who will the next Guns N' Roses be, or who will the next Metallica be? We'll just have to wait and see.
I'll tell you who they're going to be. They're going to be AI. That's what they're going to be.
Yeah, well, that could very well be, and that's a whole nother ballgame.
Oh my God, that's a whole podcast we could do just
that is a whole
on
podcast.
that. Which
And
is,
it seems, so, doesn't it seem so like right now?
yes,
Like this just happened, when that's really not the case. We've been inching towards this for years, but to me, it feels like, wow, it just happened yesterday. I had the strangest experience because I got to experience it, sort of firsthand at a convention I was at a couple of months ago. Somebody came up and they played me something that they found on YouTube, and it was a bit on Masterchief giving advice on dating, or on getting a job, or maybe on gaining self-confidence. All very positive stuff, and there was nothing negative about. But it sounded exactly like me, to the point where I couldn't tell that I was, I'm listening to it and I'm trying to remember doing that session. And
whoa.
it took me about 5 or 10 minutes, and finally a couple of things happened. I was like, okay, that didn't sound like the way I would have said that. So, but it was a real wake up call about how far AI has come. They get a sample of your voice, and all of a sudden it sounds just like you. And so it's we're entering definitely another brave new world, and you could be very well right. I'll give you another example.
Okay.
The band Kiss.
Yeah.
They're allegedly on their last tour. This would be about their umpteenth final tour, but let's just say that this is it.
When are they going to quit? Like, I feel like
Yeah,
they've been
guys.
We've been quitting
Let's
for
wrap
20
it up.
years. Like,
Let's wrap it up.
You're done. You're done.
Yeah, you're done. But what I hear, and I don't really have any great insight into this, but it's something that I hear kicking around sort of in the business, is that they will groom the next Kiss, who will continue the legacy, continue playing the music, continue sounding exact. Now, this won't be AI. This will be real people. But you know what? It could be AI, especially with Kiss, who has always done all their stuff in makeup. It would be very easy to create another Kiss band that sounds exactly like and would continue to tour and probably do very well under the guidance of the original guys. So it's sort of an interesting thought, and you take it one step further, and like I said, now we're not talking about actual human beings standing up there, but an AI on a digital projection, and wow.
Well, how do you feel as a music fan? Because I was watching it was an Instagram reel that came up, and I mentioned this on another episode of this podcast, and Billy Corgan was talking about how kids of tomorrow will make music using AI.
Yeah.
So instead of writing from experience and feeling and that kind of thing, because that's all I write from, it's all we all write from, the
Right.
human experience, it'll be like, oh, I want to sound like the Nine Inch Nails. So,
Right.
but let's just put something into a program and then the lyrics will come up. Yes, it's incredible. It's an incredible piece of technology. But that's so sad that the human experience would be taken out of something like music. You know what I'm saying?
I can't, from an artistic standpoint, I can't see a positive there, because there's in this country right now, there's the Writers Guild, who is all the script writers for TV and movie. I mean, everywhere, I guess, but it's in the U.S. In particular, are on strike. And one of the things that they are on strike about is, so let's say you have an average, let's say you have 10 writers working on a new show.
Yeah.
and they all come at it from different places, and out of all of that you form a script and an idea and a plot, and et cetera, et cetera. Well, with an AI, you could conceivably, give an idea for the show, have the AI write the show, script it all out, and then you bring in one writer to massage it and put a little human feeling into it and make it a little bit. So that's now you've eliminated the careers of 9 other writers, and you come up with this script that may or may not be something that would work. So the same things and your example of music is exactly right. And where does the art go? I mean, AI at the end of the day, the AIs that are writing your term paper in school, or some your doctorate or whatever, they're only drawing from human experience.
Yeah.
They're not creating new thought. They're an amalgamation of all the thoughts of all the people in all the world, and they can come up with something that is coherent. But it's not creating anything new. And yes, we could create a new Nine Inch Nails or a new Kiss, or that will sound exactly like the other ones, and maybe even make new music as Nine Inch Nails when none of the band is involved. But is that art? Or is that it doesn't feel like it to me. And if it's not art, where do the artists come from? Where do the artists go? And I think we've had that problem, in varying degrees, even before all this AI business. When we were talking earlier about, will the superstars of today be the icons of tomorrow?
Yes.
One of the things back, and again, back in my day, one of the things that the record business would do is cultivate new talent. You know what I mean? They would call, a band comes along or an artist comes along and they see the potential. The A&R person sees some potential, brings it to the executives. They say, yeah. And they start working with that person or that group.
Yes.
And maybe the first album comes out and it goes nowhere. I think of, the Doobie Brothers come to mind. The Doobie Brothers' first album was a complete flop. It went nowhere. But the record company, in that case Warner Brothers, that signed them, saw something there, and their next album was a huge hit. Well, nowadays you come out and your first effort is a flop. Bye-bye.
But that speaks to, I think, not to sound like an old fogey as well, but it's just a fact that it speaks to that fast culture, that fast way that we consume things, and if it doesn't hit, it goes in the bin. Right. And, a lot of the kids that I taught in the music college, even though they were brought up in the time of scrolling and social media, they were very astute. And they did say to me, yeah, we know why we've got a short attention span. And they would point to their phones. Like,
really?
They knew it.
Yeah.
And some of them hated it. And there were a few in the class which I thought were interesting that were like, I'm against TikTok and I'm against these things, because they wanted to read and they wanted. So it gave me hope, because I thought, human beings are not stupid. Well, most of them are, but there's a lot of them are not.
There are a few notable exceptions.
Exactly. It swings and roundabouts, Steve. It swings and roundabouts. You know what I mean?
Indeed.
That's why we found ourselves in the AI world. But the kids, they know, and they are aware, and so that's all that I needed to hear. And I thought that's enough. I'm not going to bang on. I was teaching social media marketing, but I was trying to teach it in a sort of moral way, in a kind of, so I used to always say to them, like, this is how you use the algorithm, but don't use it for evil. Use it for good.
Right. Yeah. Use it for good.
Exactly.
Take Superman as a cue. But I mean, that, I was mentioning the, the thing that I heard where they were having, Masterchief giving, career advice, and it was all very positive, and none of it, the content of it didn't bother me, but it could have easily been the other thing. It could have easily gone and sounded just as convincing, being something very negative or even dangerous. And that's where we have to, and the people sort of in charge, if you will, have to figure this out. And I think more importantly, as we've talked earlier, the people growing up, the younger people who are going to have to deal with this, have to deal with it,
Yeah.
and they have to figure it out. And they can't look to people like me for the answers. They have to find them on their own, because this is uncharted territory that we're talking about. So, but again, I do have faith that there's enough of them out there that they will find it.
I mean, how do you feel
They'll
like
figure it out.
you've had a long career as a creative person in general, so you've started as a drummer and you were really into music, and then you became a disc jockey, and then you found yourself working in video games and being a voice actor,
Right.
so you've done all of
How
these.
did I work that?
It's
As the
mad.
talking heads would say, how do I work this?
It's crazy. You've had this long career, but it's always been in the creative industry. Now,
Yeah.
when you look forward, where do you think, like, we're talking about all of these kind of things, and it sounds very negative, but do you see any sort of positive way forward in terms of the creative industry?
Well, there has to be, because what makes us human is our creative spark. That's what brought us out of the slime into, walking upright, and, was that yearning for knowledge and information. It's what separates us from all other creatures. And that's still there. That's still up here in the human brain. And so, I feel like we will find a way. I don't know what that way is, and I don't, I'm too long in the tooth to come up with those ideas, but I believe other people will. And I just think it's so much a part of who we are. They talk about singularity, and some people feel like we're there now. I don't think that's the case, but it's coming. And the idea that artificial intelligence will be on par with human intelligence, but it's hard for me to believe that that what will separate us will always be the desire for things like artistic expression, and creating something that didn't exist before you came along, and you created it, and now it exists. That seems to be a skill peculiar to the human race. And so I have a belief that out of all of this, something will come, that there will be a new kind of expression and a new kind of artistic endeavor, that will advance us further.
Well, let's say the apocalypse comes, Steve.
Yeah, well, then all bets are off.
And we're around to see it. And say it's like Terminator, it's like Skynet.
Yeah.
And the robots are here to enslave us. What do you say to your robot overlords? Do you lie down and take it and go, do you know what? I'm happy with this. I'll just go with the path of least resistance. Or do you go, no, I'm gonna join the uprising, and I'm
joining the uprising.
Oh.
I'm definitely joining the uprising. I just I mean, isn't it weird that so many of these great science fiction ideas, books, movies, whatever, don't really seem all that far-fetched now. And I was watching 2001: A Space Odyssey again for the umpteenth time the other day. It's one of my favorite films. And that movie was made over 50 years ago. And now some of the ideas put forth in that film are not far-fetched at all.
No.
Not even, I mean, they're like tomorrow. And I mean tomorrow as in tomorrow.
It's mad. But even when we look back at, because I was a huge sci-fi nerd when I was a kid, and I read books like H.G. Wells' The Time Machine and stuff like that. And, that's really, I mean, okay, we haven't, sorted out time travel yet, but that was about the class system, and things like that. And it was
Oh yeah.
he was making comments on the class system, the Morlocks and the underworld.
Yes, right. Great book. Great film too, actually.
It was wonderful. Oh, it's such a great film. The old film was so great. Like,
Yeah, yeah. I forgot about that, but that was a really great film. But yeah, will the robots take over? I don't know, but I hope I'm not around. Look, I'm I'm still disappointed that we don't have flying cars. Okay, we haven't even gotten to flying cars yet, so I'm not too worried about the robots yet until we can start being like the Jetsons. We'll
I mean,
wait
this is
on
the
that.
thing where they're like, AI, give us our flying cars.
Come on, is that too much to ask?
Is that
A
too much?
freaking flying car, for Christ's sake!
And while you're at it, I'll take a hoverboard because I've been waiting
Yeah,
since the 80s for that
there
one.
you absolutely, yeah. What's taking you so long?
Do you know what? I will bow down to the robot overlords if they can provide this for me, Steve.
There you go. Give me a flying car, you'll never hear from me again.
I will go quietly in the night. Thank you.
I'll go quietly.
Thank you very much, robot
Yeah,
overlords.
that's right. Yeah, yeah.
Steve, it's been absolutely wonderful chatting to you. It got very deep.
It did, but Claire, this has been and we didn't ask one question about Master Chief and Halo. So not that I mind talking about it, but it's refreshing to and I think what you're doing here, it's what makes podcasts so interesting or potentially interesting, is that you can take people that people may know, but you can take them in a direction that they may not know. Years ago, I used to do an interview show or interviews for a company, a syndication company, and I was just the guy who they were called one-way interviews, so I wouldn't even be mic'd. The mic would just be on the celebrity, whoever it was. But one of the ideas was to get them talking about something other than what they're known for, and it was always fascinating. And sometimes we would go places where you would forget the mic was on, and you discover things about them that I'm sure they probably have never revealed before, because you weren't talking about their latest film or their latest record or their latest book or their the home run they hit last night or whatever. You were talking about something completely different, and it was fun to do, and it can be very revealing.
Well, that's the thing. I've said this a few times on this particular podcast. I only invite people onto this podcast that I genuinely, I get, when you get a good feeling from someone, you think, oh, I like you. I don't know why. It's just a soul feeling.
Yeah.
And then you get talking a little bit at conventions, or it could be other work. I've invited a few friends that I've met outside conventions, and it's nice to just talk about random things, like you're just having a drink. And if people do love, Halo, Master Chief, and come in on this podcast, they're going to find out all of these other things that you're interested in.
And most of the Master Chief stuff they already know. So,
Exactly.
this is a place where we can talk about something else. Claire, it's been an absolute joy, and thank you for asking me. And I look forward to seeing you again.
No problem. We'll see you very soon. Please make sure you subscribe on YouTube, hit the notification bell and all that jazz, and subscribe to us, please, on Spotify and everything else. I've been Claire. This is me, Steve, and we'll see you again soon. Take care.
Bye-bye.